From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In the NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. I will never forget my first camping trip as a kid. I was 11 years old. My family spent the day sailing on the lake. We roasted marshmallows on sticks over a campfire. And in the dark of the evening, we spread out our sleeping bags in a tent we thought we knew how to pitch. Sometime in the middle of the night, we woke up in sopping wet sleeping bags under a torrential thunderstorm. That was camping to me, and while it didn't make me hate the outdoors, the experience did make me question whether camping was for me. My guest has had her own family camping adventures when she was young. Fortunately, it didn't stop her from getting out in nature with her own kids and writing about it. Helen Olsson is a freelance writer based in Boulder. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Sports Illustrated for Women, and Skiing Magazine, just to name a few. Helen recently published the revised edition of her book, The Down and Dirty Guide to Camping with Kids. It's all about how to have a great camping trip with the entire family that doesn't end up with everyone cold, wet, and miserable. Helen, welcome to In the NoCo.
Thank you, Erin. It's great to be here.
So I mentioned my early camping nightmare. I'm wondering if you have any horror stories that you would want to share. Was there a camping experience that went wrong that perhaps you want to help other families avoid?
Well, it's funny when you told that story, Erin, I was thinking, I think I had the exact same camping trip. We were also camping in Pennsylvania with the family when I was younger. We had one of those old canvas tents, and the rain just poured right into it. We were soaking wet. We ended up, all six of us, I have 5 brothers and sisters, in the back of a station wagon.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, I think the horror stories are many. We also had a trip where we sat around the campfire eating the marshmallows, and out of the gloom of the woods came an entire family of skunks.
Oh, no.
And we all kind of just pulled our feet up and held our breath, and skunks came through and literally circumnavigated our campfire under our feet and then just sort of disappeared back into the darkness. And it was so memorable. I guess the difference between you and me maybe is that for me, the adversity in the woods, it was really formative for me, and it made me want to be outside for the rest of my life.
So, Helen, what's a favorite spot in Colorado to recommend for camping with kids?
First, I would say I have some advice about choosing a spot in general when camping with kids.
Okay.
And that is, if you have toddlers, as you know, you need to watch toddlers every minute. You turn your back on them and they're eating rocks or they're walking into the woods. So when we were camping with toddlers, we never camped near swift water, and we never camped near cliffs.
Right.
And we also would assign one of us to be the parent on duty. So if someone was making dinner, the other parent was watching the kids. Some of our specific favorite spots are down by Silverton. We camped at Mullis Lake in Colorado, and it was just beautiful. It's right on a lake. The campsites are very private, which you don't always get when you go car camping.
True.
Near the Front Range. You can be sort of right next to other people and hear their conversations at night. So we just really loved Mullis Lake. That was a really special camping trip.
Now, you are pretty enthusiastic in the book about saying camping with a baby is fun. What do you like about camping with a baby?
We loved camping when our kids were babies because they're so portable. You can have them in a baby backpack, or you can have them in a front pack, and you can keep an eye on them. And then we would always set up pack and play inside the tent so they could take naps. They were contained. It was the toddler years that I thought were a little dicey because, like I've said before,
they can walk.
They can walk. They can walk off into the woods when you're not watching. So you just have to be so vigilant when they're toddlers to keep an eye on them.
A lot of the value of camping with kids is being together as a family and letting them explore or just goof off outside. Do you feel like it's okay to let your kids be a little bored?
So I have a chapter in the book on bringing arts and crafts when you're camping. And I talk about how you can plan just in case they are bored. You bring markers and crayons, and you can do leaf rubbings and all sorts of arts and crafts that I suggest. However, what I have found when we've gone camping with our kids is that most of the time, we never even open that little box of fun that I brought along because they aren't bored. They're engaged. They're making up games of their own. We did a camping trip one year, and my husband and I were setting up the dinner, and we kept hearing this sort of swap, swap, swap coming from the woods. So we went into the woods to see what they were doing, and they had invented a game of pine cone baseball that they were playing in the middle of the trees, and they would whack with a stick. They would whack a pine cone, and then they would run from base to base, and they were just having a ball. So honestly, I think my kids have never been bored when we've been camping.
Well, you have a lot of great advice in the book. What's the best advice you've received about camping with kids?
For me, I am a type A sort of person, and I love to get to the summit of everything. When I hike, I have a destination, and I've got to get to the top. So when kids came along, I did have a wise friend say to me that I really needed to manage my expectations when camping and hiking with kids.
Right.
And that was hard for me at first. But it's sort of when you get out and hike with them, you let them decide how far you're going to go and really listen to them and tune in when it's time to turn around. And I did do that with my kids. A moment that I had with one son was that we got on an out and back hike, and he stopped me and said, "Mom, I'm at my absolute must turn around point." And what he really meant was, I have a giant blister on my heel. So I also taught the kids to sort of know their own limits. And then as a parent, my job was to listen.
Well, Helen, I just want to ask you, what do you hope people will take away from your book?
That camping with kids is just the best way to get your kids out in nature and unplug. And it sounds so cliche, I know it, but it's the best way for family bonding. Those stories that you and I both have from our childhood about camping trips gone wrong, they become part of your family lore. And I know that my kids will have the same. We have one trip in particular that is very memorable. We were camping on Isla Ho in Maine, which is an island that's part of Acadia National Park. And I was sort of counting the number of children that we have and counting how many days we were going to be there and how many meals we were going to need to eat. And I started to get a little worried that I hadn't brought enough food, which I had not. We ended up pulling the bread off our sandwiches from the trip over on the ferry out of the garbage bag and toasting it up in the morning. And then the kids said, "This is dumpster toast, Mom. You're making us eat dumpster toast." This thing happened after I wrote the first edition. And my husband did turn to me at one point and say, "You wrote a book on this. How is it that we don't have enough food on this camping trip?" It was some adversity. We survived it. We all laugh about it to this day. So that trip has become part of our family lore.
Helen Olsson, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you for having me on. It was great.
That's it for us today on In the NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with more of what's happening in northern Colorado.